Is it streaming? Streaming. Okay. Hmm? Yes, public. Right, shall we start? Shall we start? Alright, okay, cool. So, guys, welcome to the session. Sorry for this delay because of some technical issues. So, let's get started with. So, this session is about full stack web development where I'll just build one application. I'll build two applications, and by building those applications, you just understand the patterns of how when we create the application, so how we create it. Like I'll build one application using React, which makes use of an API, and I'll make another app using React, and in that application, I'll create a backend using Fast API. So, well, let's get started with it. So, as you can see my screen, if it's visible, can you give me a thumbs up, guys? Is it visible? Okay, cool. So I'll just get started with. So I have already set it up my React app using Chakra. Let's get first. We'll create a API application. So I'll just get into it and I'll just say npm start. Alright, so I've started my React server and as you can see, the development server is starting up. And here is my basic application. This is some kind of boilerplate which when initializing a React app with Chakra, it would give it like this. So as you can see, I have initialized it with Chakra. Chakra is a UI component library. So I have been using Chakra for a lot of time for a lot of my projects. So it makes building UIs easy. So that's why I'm using it. So as you can see, it has given me this dark mode and light mode switcher, which is quite helpful for me. So let's just go into it and start developing the application. So we'll just remove these boilerplate code. First we have this box which we do not need. So let's just get rid of it. And yeah, now I'm gonna need that color mode switches, so I'm just gonna import it right here. Yeah, so as you can see, it's here. Now let's look for some APIs so that we can work on it. So how about a programmer joke API, like this? Let's look upon the joke APIs and then let's see if we can find it. There you go. And this is one of the joke APIs that I've looked on. And if I select the programming category, so if I send a request, it just sends me a joke, which is a programmer joke, which is like you can see this, we get this kind of response when I hit this API. So what we'll make is, we got this API, now we'll use this API to build it into our application. So when you see it, the application would look something kind of like this. Let's open it up. So you can see this beautiful UI, and every time it gets you a random programming joke. If I click another one, it would be like this. If I click another one, it would be like this, and these are the programming jokes. So it's a really minimalistic app, but it will get you understand how to use asynchronous programming, how to fetch things from an API, and by doing this, then we'll go up to our backend, which will be actual in REST API only, just for our custom backend. So let's get started with it. So let's first put a heading on our application. Our application is here. Okay. So let's just remove this box thing and flex. So what I'm writing is Chakra elements. So if you go to Chakra UI docs, you can see these elements. So here I've used a flex. So flex is basically a component that makes all or is basically, you can say it as a div with display on as flex. So in this, all the elements would be a flex box kind of thing. So if I like say this, and I have to import it, so that's what the error is. Now I've imported it, and this. So you can see if I do this like justify content as flex end, it would straight away shift it to this side. Now I can add some margin to it. M is equals to, let's say 8, no 9. Alright, so that's a lot of margin, so let's decrease it. Now that's 5, that looks good. Now we'll wrap up another flex so that we can get a space between kind of thing. So if I add a heading here, heading is basically a heading component that is given by Chakra only, which help us to write beautiful headings. Let's say it was one TCA session API app. Yeah, so you can see this TCA session API app. Now if I just justify this content as space between, now it would be like this. So if you guys having trouble with this flex thing, I'll just show you how the flex works. So here you can see as this. Yeah, this is a good website where I actually go whenever I want some kind of a flex box tips and tricks. So you can see here it's just opening up. Yeah. So Flexbox is basically, by default, the Flexbox is in, when you make a div Flexbox, then all the divs inside it are displayed in as a row format, right? So this flex direction, if I make flex direction as column, then it would be displayed as column wise. So just like that. And then there's flex wrap, which we'll discuss later. The main thing which we were giving is justify content. That's what we were using here. So justify content, if flex start, then all the elements would be at the start of the row. If it was flex end, then all the elements would be at the end of the row. And if it was center, then all the elements would wrap as a center elements. And here we have used space between. So what space between does is, it keeps all the apps at a lot of spaces between them. Like if there are two apps, one div would be at this end and other div would be at this end. So let's do it like that only. So what we wanted is a space between only, where this would be at here and this would be here. So the margin, let's delete this margin from here and put this margin over here, and like that. Now this is session API app. Now let's first build the UI. So what we needed is exactly here it was 1 byte, and here the joke, and then another one, and then footer. So now let's just wrap this over another flex, and let's start creating. Let's give this as justify content is equals to, no, not justify content, direction column, and that. Now if I add another div here, that would contain some text, joke. So if it will be like this, yeah. So as you can see, the joke is here. Now if I'll just use the text thing, I need to import this text here. So before starting up, I might want to install an extension for React, because further I'm gonna need some React extensions to make some components, which would be kind of which would be a helping hand for me for building this. So I'll just install these extensions. First is React ES7 Plus. So you might want to install this or you might want to not, but these are quite helpful extensions that will definitely increase your productivity. Alright, so now as this was our application, and now here we have our joke. So yeah, so let's just increase this, just align it as center, and then center, and justify content equals center. Now if what I do is text align equals center. Now that should have made the text a little bit center, but it's not. So okay. So what I have to further do is, I have made 2 flexes here. Alright. So that will make this height 75 VH, and now if I just do this and then center, now as you can see, this text is now centered by using this justify content equals center. What that does is, as I told you already, that it puts all the divs inside the flex as center. So now let's get started with increasing the text size a little bit. But before, I might wanna vertically align it as center as well. So yeah, now it's vertically aligned center, and it's in the exact center horizontally as well as vertically. So now let's change this as joke. That would be a joke. And now let's increase the text size. So font size would be around, let's say, 10 VH. That's a big size, so let's make it 5. Instead, what I'll try is, I'll just make it XL. XL is not working, so I'll make it 4XL. Now that's a good size. So what this XL and 4XL is basically, you can see these are the sizes that is given by Chakra itself, which actually maps to any pixels or EMs only. But it would be quite handy because these are the UI sizes and it looks good. So let's make it like that only. Now let's come to the API part. So to fetch the API, we'll first create a function, and in that function what it would do is it would fetch the API from this API from this URL. It would fetch and this kind of a response, and then we need to update this joke as the as this joke here, right? Alright, so first what we need to do is create some states. So let first I'll use state. So as you can see, after I install these, after I install the React extension, I can get these snippets here. As you can see, use callback snippet, use context snippet, and all these snippets. I want to use state. So I'll use this state, this hook. What this hook does is it is basically update state. So what React is React is a single page application framework. So in single page application framework, you don't need to reload the application after each after the data changes. What it does is the JavaScript inside it updates the data on the page after any changes. So that's what useState is. UseState is basically a purpose so that we can update the data on the React application. So let's just say it's joke and set joke, and at the first, this what it does is at the first what the value of joke would be. So I will say it would be null. And now before before we go further, when obviously when we are fetching some data from the API, there would be some kind of a network lag. Like the React app is open on your browser and the API is hosted somewhere else. So to make it such that the app won't crash. For example, let's say your application starts. So at the start of the application, the joke isn't there; it's null. So, but we need to show some kind of data. So to show that the page is loading and the page is getting some data from the joke API, we'll show some loader or something kind of stuff. So for that, we'll just add a loading state, that if it's loading or not. So at start it would be false because we have not first invoke the function for our getting, and then there would be error if there was an error in getting the function. Let's say your network was not on, or the API has declined, the API has switched off, and all those kind of things. So we'll set an error here and like that. Now let's make the API, let's make the function which would get the. So first what we need to do is we need to set loading as true. Whenever this shows that we have started fetching the function from the API. But before we notice that this function is an asynchronous function. What asynchronous function and synchronous function are, asynchronous function does is there are a lot of functions. Let's say you have a program which has a lot of functions. So in that functions, all the functions will run sequentially if they are not asynchronous function. But in asynchronous programming, let's say there is function A, there is function B, and there is function C. So for function B, if I set it as asynchronously, so how my program will run is, first it will run function A, then it will run function C, and it will start invocating function B, and function B will run asynchronously apart from the sequential order of our application. So why do we need this? Because there always would be a network lag. For let's say I need this joke to be updated, but because of some network lag, this joke would not be updated as I want. So further, all the variables would not have their respective values because of their network lag. So to encounter that, we just say that you process yourselves apart from us, and we'll process ourselves as the sequential order of our application, and you just process your stuff. When the network lag is complete, when you have the variables, just give it to us and we'll process it further. So that's what the thing is about asynchronous program. So now let's say now the load, now we have set our loading to true, so that means that loading has started. Then we'll add a try. Why we need to add a try? Because we need to catch some errors while fetching it also, right? So and then finally just set loading as well. So what this code snippet would do is, first it would send response to, wait a second, I just need to change this URL and make this URL as this, right? Okay, now okay, so we'll just console log what we have got as the data. So what this piece of code does is, it first fetches the data from that API. So this is the URL, it fetches some kind of data. We use fetch method. Fetch is basically a JavaScript method which helps to fetch data from the API, which helps to interact with APIs, right? So we can fetch this API from this URL, then we await for the response, alright? Then after that we convert that response to JSON by using .json, and then let's see what data comes, right? So first I forgot the import usage, so I'll just import it right here, and then that's it. Alright, so here's a React app. If I reload it and check the console log, alright, so what I have done is I have just made the function, but I have not invoked it. So to invoke this function, what we need is another hook, which that hook is useEffect. So useEffect is a kind of hook which basically fetches the data, which basically invokes on every change of dependency. So let's understand this hook first. So first, what would we need to, first part is this, and then this is a cleaning function, but currently we don't require that, so we just backspace it, and then this part. So as you can see, this part is basically what we need to do when an app changes, right? So React is, how React works is, React basically reacts to changes on our application, right? So whenever there's some kind of change, let's say if my joke is changed, I need to again fetch that I need to again invoke this function, let's say get joke. So after every time my joke changes, for let's say there's a search bar, and you have seen various websites that they auto complete your search results. So how they do that, let's say there's a search bar and there's a search content in it. So whenever you change the content of the search bar, it calls the function that would fetch data from the backend of the autocomplete results from the data from their database. So for that they use this useEffect, right? So but here we don't need any dependencies, because we just want to fetch this at the start of it and only the single time. So when we want to fetch this only single time, we don't have any dependencies, so we make this dependency array as empty. So it will just fetch the function at the start only, and every time we roll we again forgot importing useEffect, so we'll import this useEffect here, and then say I reload this. Here you can see this as here, the jokes here. Right, so now we got this JSON object as a response, where it contains error equals false, category, programming type, single, joke, and such that. So what we need is, we need this joke, right? So we'll just update this joke as, we'll just update here, set joke as data.joke, and then All right. So as you can see, the loading is here, right? So every time it loads, it shows a loading, and then we'll get our job. So that's how we fetch the data from the API. So if but we have not displayed if there was an error. So let's say if there was an error, so we want to display it also. So what we'll do here is we'll just change this code from here, load, if there's loading, just load it up, and if not, let's check for if there was an error. If there was an error, then let's say display the error, else the joke. Alright, so now if there wasn't any error, so it started working fine. But if I just, let's say if I just remove my internet from it, or let's say, well, let's say if something, if let's say the API server is down or something kind of that, it will just show you the errors, right? So we might wanna just build this UI a little bit more beautiful. So what we'll do is, instead of this loading, we'll add a spinner here. A spinner is basically a component that Chakra gives us, and it was this. If you guys were able to see that, it was like this, the small loader. If you can see, if just say if not loading, so then you will be able to see this component. Yeah, here it is, this loader we have added here. So you can see it in various web applications, this loader, right? So let's increase its size a little bit. Here you go. Right, so the spinner, and then this size equals to double XL. That's not making, that's just large. Yep, so this size is increased if I make it XL. Yep, so here it is. Now let's change the colors a little bit. All right. Okay, so now the colors are, wait a second. Yep, wait a second. Yep, go ahead. All right. So now the color, now let's change the color, and here it is. Color equals, let's say, if I change it to blue, that looks really not good. So if we change to cyan, that looks great. Now we can change it to change this color as well. So let's make it cyan only. Alright. Now we'll just remove this loading. Yeah. Alright. Well, that doesn't looks good on the light mode, but never mind, who cares? So let's just make it like that only. All right. So yeah, so that's our first application, where what we did is we first created the UI, then we started fetching the data from this URL. As you can see, when we fetch the data from this URL, we got a JSON object, and from that JSON object, what we did is we updated our state. Here we updated our state to set it as data.joke, and then we displayed it here. But before, what we did is we made use of two more states. That is, first there's loading, and then second there's error. So what these states should do is, first, if you load these, first state would update whenever you start fetching the data. Like there's a network lag, so it would tell you that the thing is loading, please wait. Okay, and then when this data is loaded, it would either, if it would check for error, if there was an error loading that data, or for if there is an error fetching that data, so it will show you that error. If not, then there is this joke that would be displayed to you, right? So now, now let's now this is our first application. So if you guys have any doubts, can you please, if you have any doubts, you can just ask me right that. I'll wait for 5 minutes. If no, then I'll just get started with our next application. So for our next application, what it is basically a notes app. So where you can create your notes, and for that we'll make a separate backend application, and then we'll connect you to our front end React, and then we'll deploy these changes. So before I'll start making this notes application, I'll tell you how to deploy this application on Vercel, this API application that we made. So first, what we're gonna do is we're gonna make a GitHub for the GitHub repo for this. So let's open the API app, and then what we're gonna do is, first, alright, so what we're gonna do is initialize git here, and then we'll create a GitHub for this, github.com, and we'll create a new repository, and that we name as TC API app, and then create our repository. Alright, so now we'll just add this code here. Second. If I change this as, one second, I think there's a conflict in the name, so I'll just ignore it, and I'll use, let's see, what I'll use is, I'll just rename this as, that would make things even worse, so I'll just go ahead and, what's that? Okay. So okay. All right. So sorry for that. And now we just rename it as. All right. they're having some kind of error in GitHub. So we'll just ignore this and we'll further shift to our new application. We'll just, meanwhile, I'll just download GitHub Desktop so that we'll deploy it further, and then we'll go to our next application. So here's our next application. So what it is, it's a Notes app right here. Alright. So that we need, let's first terminal, and alright, so we'll do the npm start. Alright. Okay, so the development server is starting. Now what we need to do is we need to make the backend also. So for backend we are going to use Fast API. So what Fast API is, you can take a look at here, you can just Google it. So Fast API is Python's microservice API framework, which helps you make backend APIs in a really fast way. Like the development is really fast and easy. So you can take a look at it here only, fastapi.yamlo.com, or you can just Google Fast API and you'll get the first click on the first link. So I'll first give you an intro about what Fast API is. So here I'll just create a new directory for the backend. So cd dot dot and then make backend, and just change its directory to this, and then I'll just open the backend. So I'll create a main.py in it, and I'll just copy paste this boiler flow here and put it here, and remove this thing which we do not require. And alright, so we have get started with our basic application. So if what we do is, Adi, one second. The meeting has been ended, so we cannot stream on it. So we need to create another meeting, and then it was for 10 minutes only, I guess.
Okay.
Shall I create a Google Meet? Okay. Shall I pause the stream?
Pause it now.
Okay. Can I pause it here?
It should be fine. Just start at Gmail.
Okay. Alright. This part was. Alright. IOH dash y double RW dash s SES. CS. And I just type it here. IOH dash y double RW then dash SCS. So let's get back to our application. So here we had created this boilerplate. Yep, here, and now we need to start this application. So to start this application, what we need to do is we need to copy this. But before, what we need to do is we need to first install our Fast API. So to install Fast API, first we need to do this. Type install Fast API. One second. Before we need to make this install also. One second. Alright, so our application is now started. Yep. So here you can see there's hello and there's world. So basically we return this. So as our application, this is our basically backend. So whenever our application hit this localhost URL, it would act as an API just like this joke API thing. And so let's get started working in it. So as you can see, this is the API endpoint, which whenever we hit it, the function below it would run. For example, if I just create another function, just let's say def get name, let's say, and if I just do this and @app.get /name. So whenever we get this, and what we'll do is we just basically need to print as this return as name. So let's say if I just this, you can see this thing is returned what we wanted to do. Okay, all right, now let's get started with our application. So basically what in our application we need two endpoints. First we need to get all our nodes. So we'll make let's say an endpoint which is named nodes, and let's get nodes, and then we need another app to open that a particular node with a node ID. So that would give us the like this and return node ID, and then we'll do this node and return nodes. All right. So what we'll do is we'll connect the backend first. For the backend, the backend, not the backend, actually the database. For database, what we're connecting is we're using MongoDB. So in Python, the MongoDB connector is PyMongo. So we need to first get started, and one second, PyMongo. So to install the PyMongo, here it is. We just need to do this. Web install so we are having some kind of error here, which I did not think would happen, but let's see what it is. So I just need a second to change my have this thing in my part. Alright, that's good. Okay, let's delete this again. Alright, this thing is working. Just need to delete this. And let's see. Alright, so it started installing PyMongo. Alright, so we'll first import it. So what PyMongo is, it basically acts as a database for our. So before doing, we need to first set up our Mongo client, Mongo database. So we'll just go to MongoDB Atlas. It's basically an online MongoDB where we can get a link and then we'll use that database. So let's get into it. I'll just sign in with my account and we'll just start setting it up. Alright, it's working. So it's loading it. Alright, so we'll just create a new project here. Alright, so we'll name this as TCA Notes app. Alright, so and then create this project. So now we need to create a database. Alright, so we'll just create a free one. These are all the AWS things. So we just selected the Mumbai because it's the nearest to us. Now everything is selected that are free only. So now we'll create a cluster. Now we need a username and password. Let's say it's Beta Labs. And then there's password, let's say TCA app 123. Alright, now we'll create user. I'll copy the password for the usage, so just paste it here. Also the username. So this now we'll create a user. Okay, and then I'll just add every API to it, 0.0.0. So what will this do is we can connect from any IP address to this database. But actually this is not required. This is not recommended. But for the beginner purpose, we are using this. but when you deploy your application on the production level, you just add that server's IP address here, so that no other person could access your database files, right? So now we just finish and close it up. So our database is now setting up. Once it takes a little bit of time to set up. Now as you can see, the database is now set up. So now we just need to connect it. Alright, so this is our connection string. So we just copy this. Alright, so now let's straight head to our code. So connecting to the database, right? So client is equals to mongo.mongo client. Here we will paste our URI, Mongo URI. Now as you can see, the Mongo URI gives you this kind of URI when you copy it, but the password here is just as like this. You need to replace your password with this password. So it's ECA_app123. Now we'll just add it here. As you can see, now we've added. Now let's create another file for our utility. So let's say it's here, and we need to copy all this. What this file would do is basically we are segregating our code. So in here I'll add my CRUD codes. Like let's say if I wanna create a data into a table, so create a node. So what I'll do is I'll just pass on this table, then there's node. So first what I've done is, so first I'll create a database nodes here, right? Close it up.